give me a little bit of a snapshot of the work you're doing in Honduras and Nicaragua.
The project we had there is called Digital Education, Rural and Inclusive. And the main objective of the project is to reduce inequality between urban and rural areas, with a focus on intersectional inequalities. So inequalities that also include gender and ethnicity, particularly in multilingual populations. And the idea is to use technology in education as a way to leverage differences between rural and urban areas. And we did, in the first stage of the project, there was a diagnosis which looked at the educational system in both countries, and we look at the difference and the main challenges for the education, including those differences between rural and urban.
What are the main challenges that you have identified?
Well, there are challenges in terms of the quality of learning. There are challenges in terms of dropouts. There are challenges in terms of the teachers' training. And there are challenges in terms of retention, because there is much more competition between the need to have the children at school and the need to have the children working and supporting the home. So the socioeconomic context is much more complex.
Do you see these challenges being unique to Honduras and Nicaragua, or are they applying to other Central American countries or in the whole of Latin America?
Those challenges apply to the whole of Latin America. They are particularly exacerbated in Honduras and Nicaragua, especially in Honduras, which is one of the countries which was most affected by, in educational terms, by COVID, and is one of the countries which has the highest rate of dropouts in all Latin America. But there are challenges that affect rural populations in basically all Latin America.
So give me one intervention that makes a difference, that you are currently looking at, studying, assessing, testing in one of the country, or one of the two countries. Would you have an example?
What we are doing is trying to adapt innovations that are being developed in Mexico and in Plan Ceibal here in Uruguay, and trying to take the elements that worked to bridge those problems and trying to implement them in those countries. And we are doing that with three principles. Participatory design, which involves all the actors in the communities and in the government. We are doing this with a multimedia design that contemplates a variety of outlets for the content and not just depending on one source. And we are doing it through design of content that are meaningful, that motivate the students because they relate to their own identity, which was one of the main issues. Most of the content that was pre-existing did not reflect their ethnicities, did not reflect their culture, and therefore students did not feel motivated to that. We are translating this into teachers and parents having access to materials that they can be linked to activities which are related to the curriculum. And that's the part which is innovative.
How do they get access to this?
They get access, as I said, through a variety of media. They get access to a TV program.
Yeah.
They get access to a radio program. They get access to a comic strip, which is printed, but it reproduces the same visual quality of the programs. And they get access to contents created to be used in mobile phones. So there is a variety of content that can be accessed through different media. I think that most of those populations have been innovating out of necessity, but it was not structured in a way, and those different efforts were not captured. So basically the project is not reinventing the wheel. It's a bricolage. It's taking the resources that they have and helping them to recombine them in a way that is more helpful to motivate them and to reflect their own identities, which I think is one of the key issues.
Bricolage in the noble sense, I would say, it's quite a piece of art and carpentry going together. Diego, at IDRC we are aiming to have more inclusive and sustainable society.
Yes.
Okay, and I think we're all aiming towards that. You were mentioning to me earlier something extremely fascinating that we do not necessarily connect the dot. Climate change and education. You were mentioning to me that in some instances, you know, schools infrastructure are getting destroyed, or telecom are getting down for a certain amount of time. All the technology you are working and the means that are not only high technology but simple, like, you know, text, strip comics, are helping to maintain education.
Yes, I think that these technologies have a critical role in the remediation and adaptation, at least to provide resilience to climate change. But it is more than that, and it was one of the reasons that brought me into this project, because I think that rural populations are in the border of the ecosystems and areas in need of preservation, and the lack of inclusion, the lack of equity, and the conditions in which their livelihoods are affected are also having an impact on the environment. So working with those populations, creating an education that gives them much more possibilities and that helps them accept different ways to interact with nature is also a way to start protecting ecosystem, protecting and creating different ways of relating with sustainability. And you had to do that through inclusion. You cannot separate both problems. So I think it's the relation of technology with climate change, technology in education, is not just as a mitigation, but it's also as a prevention. It's one of the ways to involve more these communities. And the pilot that we are doing, the topic is actually natural and cultural resources, and is create this awareness that already exists, but create this sense of empowerment in the communities. They can develop their own identities while living in harmony with the environment.
Thank you for this. It's fascinating, Diego, because you know what you have outlined covers a lot of issues that we are seeing in my own country in Canada. You know, marginalized community, First Nation, ethnicity, impoverishment, isolated community, access to education, different type of support for different type of need, community involvement. Once again, we see in region like here, through Fondation Ceibal, your work, the work of your colleagues, you know, reason to believe that, you know, there's a global conversation that can take place. And I know you're contributing to this. I thank you this morning for your time and for this fascinating story that you brought about this activity that you're conducting in Nicaragua and Honduras.